It looks like Destiny 2 is back by Bellular News. I will say, before making this, I spent the past week since launch, including the waiting queue and the constant disconnect errors on day one, made it all the way through Final Shapes campaign. Keep getting the two confused, honestly. Final Shapes campaign on Legendary, already got Microcosm. I'm one off of Kvostov because they removed the meatball. So I've played the game a little bit. I'm very curious on an outside perspective, looking in at Bungie and the Final Shape after Lightfall.
Welcome back, everyone. Here's the deal. It has been a week since the Final Shape launched. As we know, Bungie had really been failing a bunch of targets. Sony had been basically firing shots across their bow, quite directly calling out their management. And, very big picture, if Bungie failed to perform, there are parts of the acquisition agreement that pretty much will give Sony a lot of power, even more power over them. So it's in this context that we now revisit Destiny 2: The Final Shape a week after launch.
Right.
And guess what? They have actually sort of done it. They have managed to create an expansion that people broadly are loving, that has managed to effectively wind up, in a satisfying way, a 10-year-long storyline. That is a very impressive thing, especially given how messy that story was initially.
Honestly, I will have to agree with that. It wrapped up a lot of things in a very good fashion. I was wondering about how they were going to wrap it up, and even then, towards the end of Lightfall, I'm just like, how do you defeat the Witness? Which, the way we defeat the Witness is exactly the way I called it, and I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't done it, right? If you haven't played the game, I don't want to spoil it. It's a good ending. The way that you defeat the Witness was exactly how it should have done. Narratively, it made sense. Mechanically, it makes sense. Mechanically, it was beautiful. It was a very, very well-designed encounter. The final campaign mission you should liken more to a mini-raid than an actual campaign mission. And honestly, I had a lot of fun. Enemies didn't feel as tanky as they did in Lightfall. That was one of the things that I did criticize. Threshers especially being tied to your frame rate. And just going into it, it felt good. It felt fair. It felt like they were balancing the encounters, not just by arbitrarily giving things more health, right? Like, the health bars, for the most part, felt fine. It's the fact that, like, say you have an ogre in the center, and in 2 blights, you end up having some prismatic enemies, right? And you look at it, and it's designed like a raid. It's designed like a raid encounter, so to speak. Raid light, if you will. And I think them leaning into that really helped the game. Whereas in Lightfall, I feel it'd be more something akin to, we just have this, yellow bar Incendior up on each side, and maybe there's some Scions that keep sniping you, and then you get you get like one tapped and stuff. So it felt a lot more fair. I do know that there are people that said Lightfall's campaign was easy, even on Legendary. You know what? Awesome. I'm not going to take that away from you. If it was easy for you, it was easy for you. I've had a number of complaints, not only from me, but other people, that it just didn't feel correctly tuned. So I did like that. Beyond Light did do that. Not Beyond Light. Oh my God. I get the 3 mixed up. I'm so sorry. Final Shape. Final Shape felt good to play. It felt good. It wrapped up a lot of plot points. It touched on plot points we haven't touched in a hot minute. And it really kind of shows how rushed Lightfall was. And from my understanding, once again, I'll take that Kip W, right? It was entirely upper management that said, hey, Final Shape's not ready. Let's just make Lightfall. And I hear this can, please cite this if you can, or definitely add information where I'm lacking on it. The way I understand it is that some of the devs actually ended up calling out upper management because they were stifling some creativity, some processes leading into how Lightfall actually came out. So just some thoughts as somebody who's played an ungodly amount of this game over the past year.
So nowadays, we have Lord Daddy with his amazing vocal performances and all of the detail that he puts into his videos, which means that even I can understand what's going on in Destiny. But of course, for me, Destiny narrative, I think of Peter Dinklage saying, that wizard came from the moon. Anyway, point is that they've managed to do this without alienating a large part of their audience is pretty incredible. And I say that because a year ago, I don't think people would have believed that, right? Just after Lightfall? No, it would not be believed. 6 months ago, after we had been through drama and drama and drama and layoffs, nobody would have believed it, and yet, here we actually are. Now, the launch was obviously a bit of a problem. Servers were getting absolutely hammered. Cinematics weren't playing. That did lead to quite a lot of negativity in the initial Steam scores, but those have been climbing up. Now,
I will say that that's fair, and it's the Helldivers effect, right? If your game day one does not work, absolutely, that should be in your review. That should be in your perception of how the game works. Something like Helldivers is a little bit of an anomaly because they didn't think that the game would get as successful as it does. I still personally haven't touched it because I'm really worried because, Sony coming in, doing the thing. I don't like that Sony intervened, and I still just don't feel comfortable returning to the game. But if you do, that's perfectly, your choice, right? That goes into my review. And reviews are subjective, right? Someone could look at Helldivers and say 0 out of 10 game, live service. Someone could look at Helldivers, 10 out of 10, live service, good game, right? They both comment on the live service aspect, but they each have different views on which they approach this. I think that it's fair initially to say, I can't even get in the game, right? But especially if you go back and edit it later, it's like, okay, that's fine. On YouTube, right? Let's take it to the YouTube sphere, thing I work at, right? If I didn't really capture your attention in the first 30 seconds, you've already clicked off. And if you've done that, like, I encourage the comments, like, yeah, no, he's actually factually right on this. Like, 30 seconds, if he doesn't get my attention, I'm gone. I'm not faulting you for that. What I'm bringing up is, yes, you have to hook your audience. And if your audience can't even get in the game, that's a problem. We had big creators unable to get in the game. And that led into day one, having the discussion while literally sitting in queue, right? Well, do they make a streamers only queue? Do they make a content creator queue? Do they make a separate kind of like PTR public test server for the big creators? Because it's like, say, your Datto, Aztecross, Salt, Greppa, and Clan Elysium, right? If they're not getting in day one, that's a problem. And then that leads into the other issues where the PTR and stuff like that isn't viable because, well, what happens? You have to merge them down the line to the main server, right? But that could cause a whole host of issues, stuff to go missing from vaults, issues on play, because we all know Bungie's on spaghetti code, right? Like, for all intents and purposes, it's spaghetti code. So I think that it's fair to try to boot up a game. The game doesn't work. Yeah, I think that's fair to say, hey, game doesn't work, negative review. And if you want to get back into it, or you try it again and then it does work, you can go, yeah, the game didn't work on launch. I mean, servers were just really at capacity. It kept getting DC error-coded current, right? CURRANT, that was the big one, day one. Those that played day one will know. Like, that's fair. That is a completely fair review and justified, in my opinion.
Raid came out. The raid was beaten after 19 hours of play, and shortly after that, they went and they dropped a big update video, basically spelling out what the future is going to be. First, though, let's check in on the numbers. Love looking at Steam scores, love looking at numbers, and what we can see here is, yes, obviously, a big spike on the launch day, a big spike of negatives as well. But you do see that the negatives are cratering, like the negatives are falling off faster than the positives are falling off. I think that's quite clearly showing that as the technical problems get out of the way, people are generally having a better experience with the content itself. So that
my one reservation, I hope he gets to this, is I need him to show the Lightfall numbers, because Lightfall did a similar thing. We had a massive spike of players on launch, and they petered off toward, like, just after the initial season.
That's good. And if you take a look at Destiny 2, the final shape itself, like its individual product listing in Steam, you actually see it's 79% mostly positive. Again, for a game that is played like Destiny, like a big live service, it is quite hard to maintain a high, a high Steam score. But you see, they got ravaged initially, and then the negative ones pretty much disappear. And you might be wondering, why do the negatives disappear so fast on this chart, but not as fast in the main Destiny chart? The answer is, the main Destiny chart is just everybody playing Destiny, but everybody who then takes the action to click into a separate product and then leave a review there, well, that takes a bit more effort. So I think this would show you what the more engaged audience are doing.
Yeah,
people were really pissed off, but then actually it seems they saw the content and they're less pissed off. So this does look like a vindication of at least the initial experience of this expansion. Obviously, though, the technical issues did take a toll, and the one place we really see that is actually the player numbers. So with all of this positive sentiment, especially as compared to Lightfall, you really would have expected like way higher player numbers. What we're seeing is they were quite simply not able to hit the Lightfall launch peak. And the reason there is the servers literally couldn't handle it, right? So people were just abandoning Destiny and doing something else. So
the thing I will bring up as well, and somebody please cite me on this. Please find that citation. I'll try if I can remember it. There is a citation out there. It was in their TWAB, TWID, whatever Bungie puts out, right? That they had a plan of the Lightfall launch issues. This is what happened. Paragraph bullet points, right? This is how we intend to fix it. Paragraph bullet points. And servers were still bad day one. So I know a lot of people look at TWABs, look at twits and stuff like that, especially at the end of last season, the end of Lightfall season 4, right? Season of the Wish, going in the end of Into the Light, right? And we were looking at all the nerfs, like Sunbraces got nerfed. I feel like Sunbraces is a lot more fair. It was going really Murder Hobo and Planets, to the point I had a group tell me, Kip, we need you to stop ad clearing. You're spawning the Colossuses way too fast for plates, okay? True first world problems with ad clear in Destiny right there. Oh my god, LFG is a nightmare. But we had stuff like that and stuff like Graviton Landscape. Like people check the TWAB and the twits and stuff like that. But when they put in a TWAB/twit, I don't know what the actual acronym is anymore, and they say this is how we're going to fix the servers, and the servers aren't fixed day one, yes, I think that should, one, be taken into consideration for review, but two, be taken into consideration in regards to Bungie as well. The story is good. The gameplay feels good. I feel like Hunters took an L with Prismatic. I think solid subclasses are still better. Like Arc is just better amplify on just an Arc subclass rather than Prismatic. Just testing, looking at other people, looking at friends I raid with, they're really saying that Prismatic is rough for Hunters right now, and they could change that, absolutely. It's like how Warlocks didn't even get Weave Walk until, what was it, Season 2, Season of the Deep, something like that, right? To This Week of Destiny. Thank you for the citation on that.
They never hit that peak, but what we have seen is a nice, big, chunky, healthy-looking Steam graph. What I think is fun, though, is expanding that chart out to take a look at the free sort of mini-season of content that they did before, and you can see that previously they were sitting at like 50,000 concurrents. Yes. When they then did Into the Light, you see that number bump up significantly. So it basically seems that a lot of that momentum is being carried through, and they're doing a pretty good job of reactivating the Destiny player base. And
part of that was also the limited time events that was going on. One, Pantheon. I only got through week 3. I did not want to sit another 50 hours in week 4 Pantheon for Planets. Planets was the wall for a lot of LFGs that I went in, and that was fair, especially because of the fire tornadoes that spawned. I'm not going to get into mechanics. Just know Pantheon week 4 was rough for a lot of people. Nezarec and Planets were the wall. I wish Pantheon was still in activity. I think it's really cool. But that was one of those, at the end of the day, I did have to do a cost-benefit analysis. It was much better for me to relax, to not stress about it, to not go after Godslayer, and to just kind of just chill and wait for the expansion, to which I think that was the correct call. I mean, Godslayer is now more common than titles like Gumshoe, so Godslayer is kind of that weird, yes, you did the thing, but were you carried? And a lot of people were carried, a lot of people weren't carried. It's one of those titles that I think is going to be very divisive. And yeah, the way I heard it from a buddy of mine is just like, yeah, just, let the sweats do the sweat thing. Let them get Godslayer and move on. So I think that's going to be part of that retention. Another thing's going to be the Brave weapons as well. The gold variant to the Brave weapons. Those are a limited time thing as well. You could argue FOMO, but I mean, legitimately, it was a final shape ain't done cooking yet. We need to release something for you, because Season of the Wish was a long season. So, I mean, they had to do something to bump up numbers. So that leads into what you're doing right there. Brave weapons, Into the Light, Onslaught, and Pantheon. All of those inside the Into the Light update led to that bump.
The Light really was trying to do that with a lot of how its rewards were designed. Basically, if you hadn't played in a while, it was doing a good job of basically catching you up. So a pretty well executed strategy for getting players back. It's probably sad for Bungie that they won't be dethroning their previous record in concurrency, but I still think that this is a very healthy number, and at the end of the day,
it's respectable.
Yes, set a concurrency, a concurrency peak with Lightfall, and then they almost immediately undershot revenue expectations by 45%. So you don't want a flash in the pan, you actually want sort of nice, long-term, healthy player patterns, and I think they might have that here. Now, this is where it actually gets interesting to me, because there's a post-raid unlock that has got a lot of praise from people, and I really think it's cool. So,
as somebody that was watching was it Raid Cast? I can't remember what it was. It's the big Raid Report. I can't remember what it is. It's the big channel that was doing it, right? And going over like Salt Stream, going over Aztecross, Dado, a bunch of big streamers, right? Actually, there was a lot of controversy with the Raid where people were hiding their screens and stuff. I mean, if there's any doubt that people are cheating, I mean, Bungie's going to come down on that. At the end of the day, wasn't it the team that took it, the team of randoms? Didn't they have a 7th looking at the street? It wasn't Twitch Rivals, no. Wasn't it they had like a 7th that was looking at mechanics? Every team's going to do that. If you're not doing that in the contest mode, you're losing value, right? So it was Salt Greppo, Clan Elysium. They blitzed first encounter, blitzed second. I think they got stuck on third for a bit. And then fourth was their wall for like 7 hours. And then we had people, as soon as an encounter was solved, people started catching up and stuff like that. There was a weird amount of controversy around people hiding streams and stuff, like Dado hiding his stream, doing math class, that kind of thing, right? It's like, I don't care. If we're really thinking someone's lag switching, network manipulating, cheating in some capacity, I mean, Bungie will come down on that. So just a weird thing that came out of the day one. But anyways, I was literally watching at like 6 a.m. It's why I'm so tired. My sleep schedule is so messed up from this expansion. I did like almost everything except Kvalstov before Season 1 actually dropped. Like the first week, I've done almost everything, which is wild. So as soon as the raid got cleared, we actually got an in-game notification to do the new activity, and it was wild. I love how they did it without spoilers. So the way that they did this is you do your main campaign. Once the campaign is done, you do some of the post stuff. You do post for one of the funny guns, and that is a requirement, or at least your fire team has to have it to get into the raid. Once the raid is finished, it unlocks that activity after the raid that anyone can do, and it utilizes some of the raid mechanics, but it does allow your average person to finish out the story. And I like that. They made it like a live service, like you're really fighting the Witness in real time, like you're really fighting the Witness's forces in real time, right? And I think that Destiny nailed that. I think that Bungie nailed that, having a community event. If a smaller game did this, it might have fallen flat. But the fact that we had this, we had servers that were stable for day one. Remember, what was it, Witch Queen and Valve? They had really bad servers, from what I understand, where they had to extend contest mode. Like, the servers were stable. You could watch people. People were playing the raid, and then we finally got to it. And that 12-man activity really finished out the arc with a bang. It was great. I absolutely loved it.
Raid itself is a Bungie raid, and from my perspective, coming as a World of Warcraft raider, the tiny number of times I've hopped into Destiny raids, they have been truly impressive to me. Also, a group of World of Warcraft, like World First Raiders, Echo, they hopped in to do the Destiny raid. They were absolutely glowing about it and had a fantastic time. The raid itself, basically, complex, multi-stage fight, puzzle sequences, just all of the great stuff, but it's actually not the end of the Light and Dark Saga. No, the end of the Light and Dark Saga is actually a new activity called Excision. Pretty cool name. Anybody can access Excision post-completion of the World First, right? And it's via public matchmaking. And what it does is, it has 12 players in a basically all-out brawl featuring loads of different characters, cutscenes, and all of that stuff, basically designed to fully close out this whole saga. It
does, yes.
In a meaningful, distinct way, but actually in gameplay. And that, I do think, is really cool. Yes,
very cool.
Obviously, cinematics and stuff are an important part there, but meshing in with the gameplay, and that being gameplay that pretty much everybody can hop into, I think that's a real winner of a way to do that.
Very much so.
They did actually manage to put a cherry on top. And that is an impressive thing, again, given how all of the Destiny news had pretty much been negative for the year running up to now. Oh, also, people do get an exotic engram for doing it, so, also a nice little incentive. You might be thinking then, what next? Because if the saga's over, then I suppose a little bit like some Marvel fans no longer checking in with those movies, okay, well, you've ended your thing, now I'm going to get off this train. Well,
guilty. That's me. I watched some of the Marvel movies. Right? I watched like Avengers, Age of Ultron, Iron Man 1, Parts 2. I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched so I ended up watching Infinity War and Endgame, and I'm just like, I really don't care. And I hear, oh well, you need to come back to it. I hear this is good. It's been 10 years of just hearing about this. Me personally, I'm a little burnt out, and I do think that we will see what this effect with some Destiny fans. I feel that some tryhards, diehards like me, right, especially where quite literally 42% factually of my entire Destiny 2 playtime is in raids, right? I love raiding. It's great. I love it. Where most of my playtime is raiding, I'll probably still play. But I think a lot of people, they're going to look at it and go, yeah, I mean, our story's done. And it's not even a caveat of, well, unless they hook them with another hook or they do another banger, right? I think that some people after a 10-year period of time are just going to look at this and go, look, I've been following this since I was 20, or I've been following this since I was 30. I'm 30, 40 now. I kind of want to do other things with my life, right? Maybe pick up a new hobby, pick up fishing, go on a boat, whatever, right? I think that's something to consider going forward. Is it necessarily going to happen with everybody? No, absolutely not. And I think that there's a lot of people that will still play. However, I think that this is the end game moment. And in fact, I've ironically called this Destiny 2 Endwalker, because there's a lot of Endwalker isms in this for me. And I actually really like that about it. Final Fantasy 14 Endwalker. It's super funny to look at it and just kind of see some parallels and kind of view it as the Endwalker conclusion to Final Fantasy 14's story, or at least the arc it was in.
Well, less than 24 hours after the Excision mission went live, Bungie held a live stream to reveal what is next for Destiny 2. So let's talk about that. And again, I've been considering hopping back into Destiny 2, and I'm certainly looking at this and it's making me think, oh, okay, maybe it is actually worth my time. So what's notable here about Final Shape is we've actually known what's been coming for a good while in terms of post-launch. The delay to the expansion doesn't seem to have changed those plans. What they wanted to do is take the idea of 3-month seasons and all of that baggage from last year and throw them in the bin. Instead, they are doing 3 episodes, each with 6-week-long acts. So you can see there, 3 episodes, 3 acts per episode. You know, the analogy from the Destiny GDC talk about, you know, the trains in the train station. I suppose I see this more as continual heartbeats to keep the live service going rather than big content drops. One of the things that I think was a struggle for the Destiny community is, you know, not every season was of the same level of quality. Some people actually thought that Into the Light was better than some paid seasons. So that was a bit of a problem. And then
Okay, saying Into the Light is better than like Curse of Osiris, that's not a hot take, honestly. I'm so glad I didn't play during Curse of Osiris, because I hear that almost killed the game. Like, what was it? Curse of Osiris and Warmind. The game was on life support, and then didn't Forsaken come out, and then it was actually pretty decent. Wow. Like, from a factual Destiny 2 player standpoint, like, saying anything is better than Curse of Osiris, I mean, that's just an easy W. That's kind of just like, why are you comparing this apple to a doggy bag? I mean, just, I don't know. That's a weird one to me.
There's expectations of what day one of a new season is. Those would often not be aligned with what the season would be giving. So I think they've basically just decided to change up how they're developing things. And certainly when you look at a game like Helldivers 2, which is very much giving people like a lot of smaller moments of engagement and novelty, that does seem to be a sort of successful thing. So let's hop into what they're actually doing. Echoes then. Echoes is an 18-week storyline that unfolds across 3 acts. You go to Nessus and deal with a new threat that, of course, is following the completion of the final shape.
Right.
Each of these episodes, right, they are self-contained. They come directly out of the narrative of the final shape, but within each episode, each act will then add new quests, activities, and all of that stuff to basically expand on your endgame experience. So that's Echoes. Then there's Revenant. Now, Revenant is featuring the Fallen and Scorn conflict. The theme is basically vampire hunting. Seems pretty cool to me in the Destiny context. And there's also a new potion reward mechanic. And then there's Heresy, which is focused on the Hive, plus the return of the Taken King's Dreadnought as a location. I wasn't there to play the Taken King back in Destiny 1, but fundamentally, that does seem like something that I think I should be sort of excited about because, well, everybody loves the Taken King. Yeah. Basically, though, what you can...
Everybody loves the Taken King till you're an LFG, and people start telling you that banner is the back of the room in Oryx, and then you have to hold in you have to hold in the expletives as you're just having an aneurysm at this man. Good God.
Is a blend of the old and the new throughout all of this stuff. Basically, more time with characters that people like, continuation of narratives and peoples, but they do say that there is some new stuff turning up. One of them is Breach Executable. This is an activity for 3-player fire teams that basically, I mean, to me, it kind of looks like a Vex technology-themed extraction shooter. Basically, you know, you're in 3-person fire teams, you go out, you get your Vex stuff, you come back in. Within the context of Destiny gameplay, I think that would be pretty damn fantastic. And that shouldn't be a surprising thing to hear. I've basically always thought that Destiny plays exquisitely as a game, but my problem has just been it's quite impenetrable and it's hard to have MMO-like games be in your life at a high frequency. And of course, all of this means an expanding pool of rewards. They showed off what some of the guns look like. Suffice to say, yes, it's Bungie's artists. I mean, I think they are essentially some of the best in the business. Again,
so funny.
Just like watching the skill up video, watching the lore videos, the one thing that as a lapsed Destiny player strikes me is, man, through thick and thin, artistically, they have still got it. And speaking of getting it, there's another thing that you will be getting, and that is the seasonal artifact and the season pass. Those, of course, are still going to be a thing. The artifact will basically grow with you as you come out of the final shape and do more challenges, and then in Act 2 and Act 3, it will get a new row of perks. So, again, there's a little bit of a login, unlock a new row of power, which I suppose will probably feel quite engaging if, if Destiny's something you're kind of mainlining now. And also their intent is that as each act releases, the season pass expands by 50 ranks from the initial 100 up to 200, which
this is important to know. It is physically impossible to unlock the Red Death Catalyst as of right now, because that only locks in, episode 2, season rank 145. It is physically impossible to unlock the Red Death Catalyst. So it gates it, time gates it, which is kind of interesting.
I suppose, to me, it seems like the actual topic for us to talk about and retention, because in a way you could look at this and think, right, so instead of big content drops, you are just doing a drip feed across the entire year. In a way, I think it is that. However, when we're talking about a live service game, sometimes what those have ended up being is a rather static game, just that we get DLC-sized updates every now and then. Yeah. But I think in some of the best live service games, it feels less like that, and it is more just there's always something going on. Again, I think of Helldivers, be it a new weapon, be it a little bit of player narrative forming around whatever way the campaign is going, or maybe whenever the new faction comes in. There's always like something. If you read gaming news websites like PC Gamer, there's always, you know, what are the players currently doing in Helldivers? What's the new shiny thing they've got? What's the drama over a new weapon? I suppose Bungie might be hoping here that this is a more healthy and sustainable way to do it, rather than just having to do 4 seasons a year. Maybe this is them at a marathon pace, more than it's them kind of like sprinting to the next DLC, then sprinting to the next DLC. Obviously, I cannot call this either way. We need to see what this content is like. We need to see how good the value prop is. I suppose it is interesting, though. I mean, I mentioned Helldivers. That's a Sony game, and we do know that Bungie have been doing a hell of a lot of consulting work on all of Sony's live services. So at worst, I think this will feel like a bad drip feed. At best, though, you could maybe have things come in Act 1 that Act 2 could then expand on and make more interesting, such that it will feel like a game that is growing and evolving with you. That's, I think, very much the Steelman pitch for this anyway. Of course, the other thing I'll be looking out for, though, is revenue. So throughout all of this, will they be doing any funny business to get more money in? That's been the challenge.
Yes and no.
I do empathize.
I mean, reasonably, how many things have we had? The D&D crossover. We've had the Mass Effect crossover. We've had the Witcher crossover. Like, how many IPs does Sony have that they can just throw at this and say, "Give me more money"? Right? Who does that? Oh, it's Angry Joe's bit, right? Give me money, right? Give me more money. I mean, yeah, we could look at it that way. Yeah, I bought silver this season. I bought some stuff. I bought the new funny Warlock helmet, exotic ornament. Yeah, it's fine. I think the way that I look at this, let me let him finish first, because I have a idea on how and why episodes make sense.
Is with their position. They need to show results. If they don't show results, they're basically going to get in trouble with their bosses, and Sony will be able to move in and take more control and sort of remove some of the independence that's still left with Bungie.
That's my worry.
I can understand wanting to make the line go up. Like, from that perspective, absolutely. Right. And generally, they're a business. Yeah, sure, make the line go up. But in the past, they had to make the line go up even when they had bad fundamentals with Lightfall. I would hope here that they could make the line go up without having to resort to stuff that feels sketchy. But again, only time will tell. And that's very much true for what happens after these 3 episodes, which is Project Frontier, whatever it may be. We do not know what it is. Bungie would not say. They just said there's something called Project Frontier. It will happen. And that's kind of it. They just said they're going to do it, and it will be Destiny 2 related. There has been...
We're Marathon. That was one of the biggest things that burnt a lot of community sentiment during Lightfall was the really just ham-fisted pushing of Marathon. And that's the one that I'm kind of just sitting here scratching my head and going, to me, depending what Code New Frontiers is, it could be terminal care. And that's really what I've been going to after the Light and Dark saga, because we've had games like Hi-Fi Rush recently, right? That Xbox just canned. We have very successful games, very successful studios that just get canned. Was it Arcane Austin, when after they did Redfall, they got canned too, right? And yes, this is on the Xbox side of things, but you can look at the gaming industry and see that this is just a practice that they engage in. This is not performing up to standards, so they can it. Dead Space remake, a Dead Space 2 remake is allegedly not happening. Allegedly, EA is just like, well, it didn't perform. And it's like, well, EA, I have things to say about EA performance, put it that way. But this is when I look at the seasonal artifact and how he's saying that it's going to expand each season. This goes into terminal care for me. Terminal care is not a bad thing. You can still play. I can boot up my Xbox right now and still play Destiny 1, which I intend to do. At some point. I want to experience, some of the old raids. I want to experience some of the old weapons, Outbreak Prime specifically. I want to experience Wrath of the Machine, Old King's Fall. I want to experience a lot of that, and I can still play that despite the servers kind of being wonky. Remember, this game started on like Xbox 360, PS3. There were ports of that to that console, so it's wild that the servers are still up. But when we're going to the end of the Light and Darkness saga, especially in a AAA, even quadruple A gaming industry that will can studios or can projects if they don't meet certain metrics, sometimes arbitrary metrics, my worry is if they drop this. And even if they drop this, even if they just leave this as a terminal care game, right? Hey, you can still play King's Fall, you can still play Vault of Glass, still play Root of Nightmares, still play the new raid, right? And they just give us like funny cosmetics every now and again. I mean, it's not really going to attract new players, in my opinion. But I think that that's one of those things that they could do. So I'm especially because it's Sony and wanting to really intervene with some of their properties, Helldivers, right? That's one of those things I really look at them and just go, what is your takeaway point? What is your point of meeting versus not meeting, and what actions will you take based on those metrics?
Just a lot of talk about Destiny 3, maybe some worries that after this saga is done, what they'll probably do is move a whole bunch of people over to Destiny 3. Then if you're a Destiny 2 player, you would be quite worried because, well, they have a large team on Marathon. They would then have a team in Destiny 3. What would be left for you playing Destiny 2? So they're at least trying to allay those fears.
Once again, just go look at Destiny 1. This could actually... I'd be very curious what his thoughts are on Destiny 1 still being up and the care shown on Destiny 1. Isn't there... And somebody's going to have to quote me or cite me on this. From what I understand, there are some people that have issues with some Taken King armor that they can no longer equip. And they've sent in tickets, but the tickets just aren't being resolved. We already have some sort of precedent with this.
I suppose I do then look at all this and think, yeah, Destiny 3, it'll probably happen, but does it need to? Does it really need to? I mean, Destiny 2 looks fantastic and runs well, and the core business model is off expansions anyway. Do you really need to do a lot of damage just to have a new big box product? It also could be the case that Project Frontier is not just a new piece of content, but perhaps a new model for the game's ongoing development. Again, I've been talking about Helldivers for a reason. I have to wonder, is Frontier, is that also maybe tying into how they are making the game on a technical level, maybe changing how content delivery is, maybe trying to take Destiny 2, which is a live service that is rooted in the old model of a live service, is it maybe them trying to make it a bit closer to something like Helldivers, which feels like the newer model of a live service?
Yeah.
If so, that certainly would be interesting. Anyhow, they have got a lot of their audience back on board. If they treat these episodes seriously, if they do their job well, then we could actually be in a damn good place. Because right now, the game's pretty fun. A lot of the guns are very fun. Prismatic is a whole bunch of fun. The buildcraft is real strong, and I suppose their promise is that it will get stronger as they add in these episodes. They really do have an opportunity here. If they can just do a good job and have good delivery for the next year, I think a lot of that angst, a lot of that worry from the player base will start to go away, and a little bit more of that trust will be back.
Hard to agree.
One thing though, they cannot afford to have the players drift away again, and as a long-term World of Warcraft player, my humble advice is, just don't pull a Shadowlands. And on that insane bombshell, thanks for hanging out. Recommend you check out yesterday's video. We go through all of the stuff that happened with the Microsoft Showcase. Again, one of those times where you know the GIF? We're so back, it's so over. It's basically that, the video. Okay, take care. I'll see you over there.
So, do you know I never understood WoW and what players go through until I started really playing Destiny again? Until Lightfall really hit and did what it did, I never understood what WoW players have gone through for years, and it's very interesting to consider and think about. I think Bellular knocks it out of the park with this, and I think his analysis is on point. Frontiers, I mean, I could see them making a terminal care state of the game where the game gets consistent updates, gets bug fixes, stuff like that, but instead of focusing on expansions, they really just kind of waited out. They kind of maybe add another planet here, re-add another planet there, like re-adding, say, maybe, I don't know, Titan, or re-adding IO, stuff like that, right? Re-adding it to the game, making sure that, there's content that was previously available is now re-available again, stuff like the Whisper Strike, right, where you fight Zol, because that's no longer in the game, stuff like that I remember when I ran in Season of Rivals. I can see the episodic model making sense, this season, because we have the way that the main campaign wrapped up, especially the post raid, and there's a lot of plot points that are kind of left hanging. And so, especially if we're tackling, say, Vex, Scorn/Taken, and then Hive, we are realistically hitting a bunch of the post final shape stuff. We're hitting a lot of that, and we're doing it in a way that it's building off of that main campaign, and it's not like, it has a different feel than Season. It feels more linear and in line with the base campaign rather than like Season of the Witch, right? It doesn't really relate to Neomuna, in my opinion. Season of the Wish didn't really relate to Neomuna, right? How they're kind of their own self-contained story, right? And I think that having the episodes aligning with that, as long as they're putting out the content, as long as it's good content, and as long as they're communicating, I'm for this. I think there's a misconception in regards to me hating Destiny. I really don't. I want the game to be good. My criticisms through Lightfall were that this game, it feels good to play. It's like Halo Infinite. The bones of this game are good. Yeah, there's some spaghetti coding. I want this game to be good. Lightfall, especially decisions by upper management, just cratered the game for a lot of people. And I think that Final Shape is going to earn back a lot of players' trust, but they have to treat it right. And that being said, as I've said before, if it hits certain metrics, if it hits a certain number, certain critical mass, I do worry what Sony could do and if they could step in and stuff. If at worst they just keep adding promotional stuff like, oh, get our Helldivers bundle. Oh, hey, y'all get our Resident Evil bundle. Get our Las Plagas Ghost shell, right? Sure, I could care less. As long as we're getting a functioning game, as long as the purchases like they are now where they're optional, that kind of thing, sure, I'll buy the season pass and stuff. I grind it anyways and have a consistent group of people that I raid with and that I do things with. So it was an interesting video. I think that Bellular is cooking with a lot of these opinions. I think that he going into, what he did at the end, where does this lead? Does this lead to this? I think that is a lot. That's the right headspace to be in. Final Shape is, yes, a start, and I do agree with that. And that it's how it follows up from that. And if it craters, if it crashes and burns, which I hope it doesn't, that's going to be unfortunate because this game really has a lot of potential, especially with the build crafting you can do, especially with Prismatic. I think Hunters are taking a huge L right now because of the lack of a focus. But as soon as more fragments and aspects get added, I would hope that Hunter can overcome those difficulties. So let me know what your thoughts are. Definitely, if you have not, go ahead and check out Bellular. Awesome dude. Love his content. Watched him for a little bit. Saw that Asmongold reacted to him, so I thought, hey, why not? Especially because, we're kind of in my wheelhouse at this point with Destiny, a game I play a lot of. Let me know what your thoughts and comments are in the comment section down below. Let me know what your thoughts are on not Lightfall. I guess Lightfall too. Final Shape. Let me know what your experience was. Do you think that I made sense with a lot of the points I made? In any event, thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you all in the next one.